A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-Cole credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. There she is. Hey, Sam.
Hello.
Powered by the OBBM network. We are proud to be here tonight. We have a special night. But before we start, I just want everybody to really take about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I'm going to say a prayer for Sam's mom, who is in the hospital right now. So let's take about 10 seconds and just say a quick prayer. All right. Now.
Thank you, John.
Oh, what's that?
What is that?
Oh, it's a balloon. I hope it's not from Japan, China. Nope. It's the Let's Get Mentally Healthy balloon. That's what it's all about. Let's get mentally healthy. This is the only, I was watching this friggin' spy balloon go across our nation all friggin' week, right? And then I find out, America is glued to their TV sets looking at this balloon, right? But no one's worrying about the mental health of our first responders and our military officers out there that are battling each and every day. I wish America would take as much interest in the mental health stigma as they do when something comes on TV of this magnitude. And, we are here with our guest, going to be JP McMichael, who is really bringing forward a lot of notoriety to post-traumatic stress. So we're going to get back to that in a minute. So Sam, welcome, and God bless. Prayers with your mom.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Really appreciate that, John. And so that should be the only members, right? Because the stigma of mental health, it's not just for first responders, it's just the overall stigma, because mental health affects everybody, affects families, both that wear the uniform and those that don't. So it goes to what we talk about. It's the humanness, right? We got to find our human side again. We've got to connect more, and we have great partners. We've been blessed to be Carry the Load, as you see right here. Carry the Load nonprofit partners for the second year in a row. Carry the Load is a national nonprofit. They take mental health very seriously. We are together bringing back the true meaning of Memorial Day, supporting our nation's active duty, our veterans, as well as our law enforcement and first responders. And we need it more than ever. And our guest tonight, he's been on an incredible journey. The three of us share 9/11 in common, and it is he is connected to people in a way where his website is perfect. I'm going to put it up here in a minute when I introduce him. But he is a true catalyst of change. And the way he connects through writing kids' books and the other places that he is on LinkedIn. That's where we first met. It's just amazing what he's doing. And for everybody watching and listening, make tonight, draw a line in the sand. If you're on the fence about, there's stuff, I almost said the other word, there's stuff that's going on tonight, draw the line in the sand. Tonight is the night you're going to hear an incredible story that's going to move you to going to ask for help. If you need it, it's out there. Ask for it. We want to thank our media sponsor, OBBM Network. And so without further ado, let's bring on JP McMichael, his 9/11 first responder at the Pentagon. Again, wrote a children's book. I'll show it here when we get into that. But JP, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, JP.
Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's just dive. Yeah, let's dive right in, and just if you could tell everybody watching and listening about your career in law enforcement that spanned 20 years, and now everybody's ears are burning. Oh wait, 9/11 first responder.
So I am in my 25th year now with the sheriff's office in Arlington County, and I also teach at Marymount University, and then have the company where I go out and do public speaking and write books as well. My career here has been varied. I've had lots of different jobs, but the catalyst that kind of got me to where I am today was the 9/11 attack on the Pentagon. So that morning, I was in court. We had a jury trial that was getting ready to start, and somebody came in and said that one of the towers had been hit in New York, and we figured that it was one of the small planes. There was a medical issue or something like that. Nobody could have imagined what was coming. And then shortly thereafter, another person came in and said a second tower got hit. So at that point, we knew that something was going on. And where our courthouse is at in Arlington, Virginia, you can see the Pentagon right out of the window from it. So when the call went out that the Pentagon was on fire, we could already see the smoke coming up from it. And then one of our guys came across the radio and said that the Pentagon was not on fire, that a plane had just flown over his head and into the building. So at that point, we knew we had to get out there. And I think within 15 minutes, I was probably down on the scene, not knowing that that day was going to completely alter everything for me. We were out there. I think I got down there right about 15 minutes, like I said, after the plane hit, and I was down there until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then back again at 6 a.m. And from that point on, it was a little bit after that where I started to realize that things were not going the way they were supposed to be going. I was still seeing things, smelling stuff, having flashbacks. Anytime the audible tone, the emergency audible tone on the radio would go off, that sent me right back there. Now, while we were out at the Pentagon, we got an alert that there was a plane that was coming up from the south. And at that point, they didn't know that that was the fighter planes that were coming up from, I believe it was Norfolk. Mm-hmm. They were just telling us there's another plane inbound, and they counted down from 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, up to the point, I think it was right before that, where they realized what was going on with that plane. And then we also had the alerts going across the PA system there telling us to back up from the building, because at that point the floors hadn't collapsed yet, but it was still unstable. So you'd go up to do something, they tell you to back up, then you had to go forward again. And you had all the people running from the building, some people trying to get back into the building because they realized they forgot stuff. And as time went on, I was still seeing and, imagining all that stuff. I wasn't sleeping. And at that point, I was on our peer support team. I had just gotten on the peer support team the year before, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm going crazy, because I shouldn't be, every time I hear a noise, I shouldn't be standing at the Pentagon when I'm talking to somebody. So, of course, being a knucklehead, I didn't go ask for help. I didn't say anything to anybody. I said, I know peer support. I can get through this. It'll all be good. And you fast forward about 2 years later in 2003, at that point, I believe it was May or June, my wife at the time was like, I can't deal with this anymore. I was going home every night and locking myself in a room and not interacting with anybody. I had withdrawn from everybody. She ended up leaving. And at that time, my parents, my sister, and her family all lived in the same community. So whenever they were coming by, I was telling them, she's at grad school, she's at work. There was always some excuse, because it was bad enough that I was going through what I was going through. But then to have to tell somebody that my marriage failed on top of all that was even worse. And October of 2003, I got to the point where I just could not deal with any of it anymore. I got up one morning, went downstairs, opened the front door, looked out. It was a beautiful day, just like it was on 9/11. And went back, sat on the couch, wrote my note out, apologized to everybody. I apologized to whoever was going to be the unlucky one to find me. And set the pencil down, put the gun to my head. And as I started to pull back the trigger after I closed my eyes, for whatever reason, I had a moment of clarity and I saw my wife. And I knew that if I pulled the trigger right then, that she was going to get blamed for it. And that is the only reason that I didn't that day, because I was ready to go. I had had enough. I couldn't deal with anything anymore. And for whatever reason, I mean, now looking back on stuff, I feel like there's a reason that I was spared that day. There was a reason that I saw what I did, and that I have a purpose to share my story. And if I don't, then what good was whatever, everything that I went through that morning and that day on 9/11. And so a little bit after that, I ran into one of the guys that worked in Alexandria PD. I was going through rehab for shoulder injury, and I had seen him through that. That's how I met him. And he was like, something's not right with you. I was usually very happy, very outgoing. By this point, I wanted nothing to do with anybody. I was coming to work and I was going home, and that was it. And he got me hooked up with what's now a PCIS seminar that was run by Jim Horn from the FBI, Kathy Thomas and Irene Hadjisava, and Donnie Boyd, who was a firefighter out of Maryland. And I went in there and Kathy did EMDR on me. And it was like night and day. Just the first session of doing it, that was the first time that I had laughed, and I couldn't tell you how long. And when I walked back into the room, everybody said it was like the weight of the world had been lifted off of me. And they ended up keeping me on as the law enforcement peer for that group. And then every month when we would come back and do those groups again, either Irene or Kathy would do EMDR on me. So every year when I work National Police Week and I get to see them, those are the two that I think did the most towards saving my butt and, getting me back to where I'm supposed to be at by going.
JP,
Yep.
Let me ask you a question. Let me just back up a second with the EMDR. You got 25 plus years in law enforcement, right? When 9/11 hit, when the Pentagon was struck, you had about 10 years in? How many years?
That was 4.
4 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Traumas prior to 9/11, during EMDR, I mean, in 4 years, you're going to see a lot of trauma in any law enforcement field. Did you get to heal from those traumas as well? Or did, sometimes 9/11, a big event, opens up Pandora's box on a lot of stuff. How'd you feel prior to that?
It was.
You know what, John? That's a great question for JP. We got to take our first break, and we will come back, and JP will dive right into that. We'll be back, everybody. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical Bill of Rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam and our guest, JP McMichael. How to bring a little levity into it because, we're on such a serious issue. You know, we have to learn how to laugh. We have to learn how to joke around, and we can't be offended by every little thing that goes on because that crushes our soul. Before we left, we were talking to JP about his 9/11 Pentagon experience, which I want a couple more questions after this. But prior to that, he was about 4 years in to law enforcement. And in 4 years, the body sustained so much trauma, not only because you are new to law enforcement and do not know how to absorb it correctly. And back then, we really didn't have the peer support teams or the mental health awareness that we have today. So, Jay, thank you for sharing this. Tell us a little bit about the traumas prior.
So prior to 9/11, I was actually very outgoing. I used humor a lot. So a lot of this stuff I was able to just let kind of roll off my back. I had issues from earlier on with my dad growing up that when we did EMDR, that stuff kind of came back. But getting into law enforcement, I think because I was so early in my career, you know, when you get out of the academy, you're like ready to take on the world. You want to do everything, you know, nothing's going to bother you. I think I was still in that little honeymoon phase then. And after 9/11 happened, it was even shortly after that, there were still times where I was kind of dealing with stuff. It was just like little bits and pieces I was seeing that were starting to kind of go off the rails.
So, you know, you bring up another good point, and that's a whole nother issue is when we talk about family and we talk about our coping mechanisms prior to coming on the job, the things that we endured as children, as teenagers and adolescents, before we became into the law enforcement field, our coping mechanisms may have already been skewed a little bit, so we don't know how to handle things correctly. Now, your ultimate, the day you wrote the note, and I'll tell you, me and Sam have had somewhat of similar experiences, and I don't know what it is that everybody I've spoken to who did not go through it but was right there about to had this epiphany, like you said, where something put their hand on you, someone put a higher power said, it's not your time. It's, you know, you're here to make a difference. You have to change. And you know, we've all had that. And I'm glad that you had that same one. It gives me chills to know that. And that you've done something so wonderful after that experience to change others' lives. And the children are the most effective. So do you want to get into the book now, or do you want to wait?
Sure.
Oh.
Because everybody, this is JP's book. So for those of you that are listening, it's Why Won't You Play With Me? JP, I've read this like a million times since I got it. It is so moving and really gives parents that are suffering with post-traumatic stress a dialogue with their children. So tell us about, first of all, tell us how you got the idea to write the book, and then tell us a little bit about it.
So that came about, I want to say it was 2017-ish, 2016. I had a couple buddies of mine had passed away, one from suicide that I grew up with that was a Maryland state trooper. And I had another buddy from our police department right here that got brain cancer and passed away about a year after that. And being on peer support, I'm taking everything in and trying to help everybody and, you know, do everything for everybody except for myself. During that time too, in 2012, I ended up breaking my neck training for a fight and had to have 2 surgeries, the last one being in 2015. And while I was dealing with that, dealing with the my friends that passed, my son walked in because I'm laying in my room on a weekend having a pity party, and he came in and asked, why won't you play with me? And the pictures on the book, I had the artist make it look just as much as she could like him at the time. Because at that point he was a little munchkin. Now he's almost as big as me. But when he came in and said that, it was like getting kicked by a mule. And it kind of started waking me up like, what am I doing? I can sit and do this to myself. but I can't do that to him. And he starts asking me all of these questions that an adult would have never come up with, or would have had the nerve to ask you. And when I go out and speak, I compare him to a 99-year-old being trapped in a 12-year-old's body. And he comes up with these kind of old soul questions, and he'll just ask you point blank, like, why did you want to hurt yourself? Why would you do something like that? And then one night he goes, well, if you had done that, I wouldn't be here. And you don't think about that stuff.
Right.
And so when I wrote the book, it actually sat on the shelf for a couple years because I'm like, nobody's going to want to read this. And the more he kept asking questions, and we kept having conversations, and I started where I was not being, I wasn't being present in my life when I got home. It was work, 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 and then turn it off when I get home. And I started saying, okay, at night, I'm going to set aside time just so I can answer all these questions for him. And the more that he kept asking me and the more I answered them, I realized I can't possibly be the only one who's having trouble trying to explain to their kid what I went through without giving them gory details. And so the way that the back part of that book with the workbook piece to it, it's to start that conversation so that each person has the opportunity to write stuff down if they're not ready to talk about it, and come back and look at it at a different point.
Yeah, we're going to talk about what that workbook section. That's what I wanted to touch on. We got to take another quick break. We are talking with JP McMichael. He is Catalyst, the leader, the founder, the creator of Catalyst of Change Associates. You can go to catalystofchangeassociates.com, and we will be right back to continue the conversation.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance we'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, welcome back.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV?
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, with our guest tonight, JP McMichael, author of Why Wouldn't You Play With Me, and founder of Catalyst of Change Associates. You know, there's two things that really spark my interest with you, and it's the media's fault, is that, you know, we all think about 9/11, right? And that's where you were, me and Sam were, right? We were at the towers, you were at the Pentagon. It seems like the Pentagon and Pennsylvania are the lost part of 9/11. It's something that the news really never focuses on. And when we talk about your book, The Children, we never talk about the children impacted by post-traumatic stress. We always talk about the spouses, but kids are so impressionable. They read adults like a book, you know, so they see change in their moms and their dads, and why dad's not eating dinner, or dad's angry, or, you know, there's always arguments. So you hit on, you know, there's two things about your journey that really, really bring to light how we can change perception, how we can change the stigma, and how we can bring forward mental health to not only ourselves, but our families and our children.
Yeah. And so with the conversations and stuff that I had for him, and what you talked about with the kids kind of seeing everything that's going on, it's almost like they're a sponge. Mm-hmm. And he had come up to me one day, and, you know, with the PTSD, one of the things when I was having bad issues, I would just go out and drive at night, and I could be happy 1 second and then the next minute just explode and be screaming and yelling. And he told me one time later on, he said, you can be really scary when you're mad. And I didn't think about it. And I was up in Canada speaking at a conference up there, and I was likening our job to being a professional wrestler, and how, you put on a character, you go out, you do your match, you come back, you take it off, and you go home. We don't take our costume off. We don't take our character off in this job. And as I'm sitting there doing that, I'm thinking, I'm 6'3", 280 pounds. And I'm thinking about this kid all of a sudden while I'm standing on stage that I'm towering over, and I'm screaming about something that had nothing to do with him. And it was at that point where it hit me, and I'm like, man, I'm just, you don't think about it.
You don't notice the inflection in your voice either, because it becomes the norm. You're screaming at people all day long, and you're screaming at criminals. You're screaming at, other people on the street because you're law enforcement, right? So when we come home, even my tone, and I know Sam's the same way, our tones aren't sometimes come off as authoritative. And to a child, when we come off like that, I've had that same thing. You're a little scary, but I don't mean to be, but it's just what we've grown into.
Yeah, and it's like I'm standing there, and I'm like, you can't see it now, but I'm covered in tattoos. I got a mohawk, the whole 9 yards. So I'm standing there and getting angry about stuff, and never once did it cross my mind how it looked to him.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things, and first of all, there's no mohawk here, so this is like represented.
I don't wear sweaters like that either.
It's a little bit, but the thing that I like, my kid is now 15. He tells my story better than I do. What has this book? What sets it apart from I'll say it, I don't like to use the word normal, but like a normal children's book is you have the story, you have the beautiful illustrations, and that's it. What you have in here is key because it increases the communication between whatever adult is reading this and their kids at home, to help express feelings on both sides. There's an entire a few pages of book type stuff at the end of the book. And I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to show everything because I want people to go out. Even if you do not have children, you should, or your kids are grown, you should go out and get this book wherever books are sold. You can find it. Why Won't You Play With Me? And can you talk a little bit about the commitment that's in the book? Because I think that is really huge. You talked about how you had this epiphany on stage, and how did that translate into making that commitment with your son?
So first of all, the workbook, it was kind of funny how it came about because it wasn't in the original plan, and Amazon told me my book wasn't long enough. So I had to add stuff in. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, how can I do this? And then I realized I'm not good at talking to him, and that's how it came about. But the more that I was out speaking and paying attention to suicide and PTSD, I was seeing more and more kids that were completing suicide that were my son's age. And as I started looking at the statistics of how much time we as parents spend with our children, it's minuscule.
Yeah.
And so the love, play, commitment piece that's in there is simply if you make a promise to your son or daughter to do something on, say, a Saturday, but then work calls and we have to go in because we've all had to do it, instead of just going, oh, dad's got to go to work, sit down for a minute and try and make sure that you follow up and make the time to do it again. I think a lot of times we think that our spouses and that our kids won't understand if we explain stuff, and they're a lot more aware of what's going on than we think.
Yeah.
Just
that's for sure.
Yeah.
a bit of time to say, I have to go to work. I wish I could be here today to spend the time with you, but the next day I'm off, we're going to go do what we're going to do, and mark it on a calendar so that he sees or she sees what that you're committed to doing that. Just doing that little piece, because if you don't, you just keep going, oh, dad's got to go to work. Dad's got to go to work. And just recently, I just got back to work after I was off for 3 months for a knee replacement. And during that 3 months I was off, I wasn't working at all. And by the end of the time, right before I went back to work, both of my kids were like, it's been nice having you home. You're happy, you're laughing, because there was no work stress. And it was spending time playing Fortnite and all the other stuff that they do, and just hanging out with them and doing stuff that we don't ever kind of step back and take the time to do.
I was going to ask you that. Have you seen a change in your children from post EMDR to now?
Well, my daughter just turned 11 yesterday, and he's 12. So they were a few years after that. But definitely after all the stuff was going on, and I wrote the book and finally started going, okay, I need to start talking about this more. I'm still dealing with stuff here. I started to see the change. I was still throwing myself into work a lot, and there's still times, and I described it yesterday when I was speaking to a group. It's like the PTSD just kind of sits back in the dark, and it waits for that opportunity and tries to hop out. And if you're not aware of your triggers and how to address them, then it's going to get you. And going to, I don't know if you all have heard of the Boulder Crest program, the Warrior Path.
Oh,
So
yes.
I went through that in 2020, and my son would every night he'd be like, "How's summer camp going, Dad?" And it was going to that and sitting there with a bunch of other guys that were going through the same exact thing and getting to learn what to do and not to do. And after that was when I really started to see the change in them towards me and just me in general.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We have Josh coming back on the podcast at the end of the month. An amazing program. It's incredible to hear the testimonials from folks that have gone through it, and just so grateful that they've expanded it to include first responders now, because there is an art in a way to learning to struggle well. And the way you just explained post-traumatic stress is that's it. It does lurk in the background. Something that John and I talk about in our workshops that we do is there's kind of a movement out there, I'll call it. There's like, oh, you can be cured of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's like, let's not fool people. It's like, no, you learn to manage your triggers with post-traumatic stress, and therefore because you learn how to do that and you recognize and you've explained it to family, friends, etc., that's where I think people are like, well, yeah, that's a cure. It's like, no, that's not.
Yeah, it's a healing method. It's a healing method, unless the Chinese could wipe out everything that we've seen and thought about since day one on the job. Once if you were able to reset your memory and forget everything and not remember a thing, then maybe there would be a so-called cure. But your brain is the ultimate computer, the ultimate sponge. It remembers everything. And and like you said, with the triggers are the most important thing, because if the triggers recall a bad memory, that's when you're going to have the issue. So you got to train your triggers into that. I'm not in that zone. I'm not in that place anymore. This is just a loud noise. This is just a bad smell. This just, whatever it is, and breathe through it, and the triggers will subside. Otherwise, there's no cure for it.
And I wouldn't want to wipe out anything that happened. I know, a few years afterwards, when everything was real intense, then at that point, I was thinking, man, if I could just not have been there that day, I wouldn't change a thing that's happened. Because I've been able to get out to share my story. I've been able to help students by telling my story, my kids, and just doing the little videos every morning that I do, and that kind of stuff. I feel like it built a foundation in me. And I don't know if you've the Japanese art of kintsugi, where they take the pottery and put it back together with the gold.
Mm-hmm.
That was when they told me about that. I was like, that is exactly what's happened since then. I was shattered. Now I'm put back together, and that gold represents all the people that have come along that have helped throughout that journey.
Absolutely. Well, we're having a fantastic conversation with JP McMichael. He's a 9/11 first responder to the Pentagon, as well as an author of several children's books. We got to take a quick break. We will be right back.
To the Health Engineer Show. I'm Kurt Fuquay, the Health Engineer, right here on the Offbeat Frequency.
Hi, I'm Larry Cortampa.
Hi, my name is Susan Hamilton, and you're watching Offbeat.
Hi, this is Doreen Milano. Welcome to Big Ideas Small Business, where we will talk to Terry Arjala.
Hey, welcome
To
back.
the Health Engineer Show. I'm Kurt Fuquay.
Welcome back to Panda Giovanna Podcast with John and Sam, with our guest, JP McMichael. We're talking about your journey through post-traumatic stress, through the Pentagon, through law enforcement, and the books that you've written to try to help combat and start that conversation with your spouse and your family members and your children as well. Sam brought up before we left that you're an author of multiple books, and not only for post-traumatic stress, but for bullying. Now, I take a very active role in Bikers Against Bullying here in Texas. I dealt with a lot of sex trafficking with the Texas Runaway Squad, and I have a heart for that. How did you come into? Was one of your kids bullied? Was somebody that bullied?
Going back to what I was saying about seeing the people getting younger and younger with suicide, and then reading about it, and then my kids getting into elementary school, and not them getting bullied, but hearing them like ask a lot of questions, like, why is this person different? This person's in a wheelchair. Why are they different from me? So that book called Especially You goes over differences in people, and it was a way for me to try and explain to them that it doesn't matter about size, shape, whether you're able-bodied, not able-bodied, whatever the differences were, that it was about what was inside and not outside. And also getting into the bullying piece as well, because I knew that so much of that was impacting so many young people. So I wanted to, again, try and just get something out to help younger kids be able to see it before they encountered it, so that they knew, and they started that conversation with their parents about, how they felt about themselves, if they thought something about them looked different than everybody else, or, just self-esteem piece of it. Because I also, I co-chair a body image group out in Fairfax, Virginia, every other week as well. And that kind of brought more of it about just listening to adults and young adults talking about issues with self-esteem and body image, and then hearing the same thing from my kids as they're growing up. So I figured that was a perfect opportunity to kind of put the same kind of setup that I did with the first book out there to start those conversations again.
It's just another great topic, because like when we were in school, right, bullying happened between school hours usually. Then you didn't see the bully anymore. Now we have the cyberbullying, where it's all over the internet, and that's where the kids are, and you may not even be directly impacted, but your friends see it. It goes viral. All these things happen. And that is a big contributing factor to the mental health in the children's suicide, why it's so high. You know, it's that cyberbullying. It's that you are different. It's the constant every time you look at it online. So kudos to you for really trying to save our children from such a horrible thing that they have to go through.
Yep.
And then Catalyst of Change Associates, folks, the website's gorgeous. Go there. You can read a lot more. It's catalystofchangeassociates.com. How did you decide, like, hey, I need to put this out on social media, have a website, explain everything about what I went through, and just boom, to the world?
I had been out speaking for probably, I'm trying to think, it was probably like 2006, 2007. I think I did my first ICISF World Conference. So I had been doing stuff, but I hadn't been kind of paying attention to the business side of it. And as I was doing stuff, I would see people that I admired, like Dave Grossman, and I would go up and start asking questions and picking his brain, because I knew I wasn't going to get an opportunity other, if it's there, I'm going to ask. And, the worst they can do is say, no, leave me alone. But I started picking people's brains and said, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. And it was also kind of getting myself prepared for retirement that's coming. I figured it's going to take me years to build up the platform and the following and everything else. So I want to start now. And I believe it was 2019, I believe, was when I started it. And I knew that I would have several years before I retired. So I wanted to start doing it and build it up. And then I was speaking at the World Conference right before COVID and met a lady named Jean Steele out in California who reached out to me. She was in the class and she was like, oh, let me help you set this stuff up. Your message is great. The children's book. So she's kind of been mentoring me along the way and teaching me, how to do the business side of stuff, and kind of reminding me that I have the ability to get a message out there when I'm, beating myself up, which I do a lot. So she kind of gives me the positive vibes so I can keep going as well. So.
And we all need that little extra wind in our sails to keep us going, and like I said, that positive vibe keeps us going, and it helps. What you're doing is also self-healing with all the programs that you're putting out there with Catalyst for Change. And, when we talk about retirement, this is what we look at a lot of guys coming up towards retirement are not planning. They plan their financial, they plan their medical, but they're not planning their mental health. Yep. When we lose that identity, we're going to have something there to grip onto, or we're going to spiral and fall into a hole. So planning is the most important thing mentally to do for retirement.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot from folks that have just left our agency, how when they leave, nobody talks to them. They lose all that communication. And one of the great things that happened in Boulder Crest was between the first day and the last day, I'd stopped identifying myself as a cop. We had an exercise that we had to do. And in that last day, I was like, oh, that's not on there anymore. And realizing I'm a father, I'm a husband, a brother, son, I'm a teacher. I've got all this other stuff going on. This is just one aspect of it. So I'm very fortunate where I work. I have a great, amazing team around me. I've got great people that work for this department. We just got a new sheriff a month ago. The sheriff before was very progressive and moving forward with mental health and wellness stuff, and it's just continued to a higher level now.
That's good.
And so being able to talk to the younger folks that are coming in, being able to go to the academy and kind of get them to see if you need to start everything right now as you're coming into the career, not wait and think, oh, I'll have time down the road. And then you turn around and 25 years is here.
It goes quick.
Yeah.
It goes quick.
It does go quick. We are talking to JP McMichael, 9/11 first responder and author, and the founder of Catalyst of Change Associates. We got to take a quick break. We will be right back.
Hi, welcome to Heroes in Action. I'm Ray Amanat, founder and creator of this training system. I originally made it so that everyone can train for free. We have programs for kids, for women, families, and businesses. I'm an author, speaker, and educator on everything that has to do with violence and bullying prevention education. If you'd like more information about who we are and what our programs are, please go to our website at heroesinaction.us or give me a call if you have any questions at 727-314-2534. We hope to see you here to train.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, with our amazing guest, JP McMichael, author of some amazing children's books and founder and owner of Catalyst for Change. You know, it's funny, I forgot all about that commercial that we had about bullying and that self-defense. So that must be right up your alley, JP.
My son just got into jiu-jitsu a couple years ago. So now that I can't do anything anymore, I'm kind of living vicariously through him and cheering him on. So
yeah,
That's
and it's
fantastic.
and that's what you need to do. You got to pass on what you've learned and teach what you've gone through, so that our generation, our children, don't have to suffer that same fate. They don't have to go through those same things. It's hard. It's not easy.
You know, you said something about, part of, again, what you learned at Boulder Crest, going through one of their exercises, not physical exercises like the writing exercises that you do, and that the identity. And so John alluded to it, you do your career as a law enforcement officer or first responder, and boom, you're out the door, and it's like, bye. There's not a lot of communication. That's normally how it goes. Learning that you're you that puts on a uniform every day and happens to be a first responder. That is a bigger hurdle to get over for a lot of folks, because just like choir practice and alcohol with law enforcement being accepted, this persona that we take on because of what we have chosen to do for our career, we become the job. But when we take a step back and we can really educate as you're going along in your career, remember who you are. Because you were somebody before you put on that uniform. You're going to do a career in a uniform. Well, maybe if you're a Secret Service agent, you won't wear a uniform, but you got the gun, the badge, the whole thing.
Yep.
And then post, it's not. You have to preserve yourself in your career the entire time. And, we hear it, easier said than done. That's a pet peeve of mine. I hate that saying, by the way. It is easy. It has been done. And for those folks that have done it, you've got to mentor the people in your department. You got to get out there. You got to talk about how you did it. Because without guides, without mentors, John and I wouldn't be where we are. JP, you had incredible mentors yourself, and it's part of the give back.
Right.
Yeah, and you have to, before you can be a leader, you have to be a servant first. And the opportunity to help the younger officers coming in, or even the older officers that are nearing retirement that haven't planned, and kind of pointing out, like, look, you've got this story, you could be doing this, or you have this talent. And I'm fortunate. The teaching piece kind of fell into my lap, but I have the opportunity to have these college students come in, and I've got to bring several of them in to intern with the department. I've got to help several of them get out to other different areas that they want to go to. But by just something as simple as sharing my story with them the first week of class, they then turn around and start talking about the struggles that they're having. And I get to point out to them, you know, you're a great writer, you're a great poet. You know, a lot of times nobody's told them this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're so busy trying to figure out right from left. And, you know, I'm away from home for the first time, and I'm trying to not feel awkward in my skin and do all this stuff. But being able to work with them and being able to mentor them as well kind of like lit a fire underneath of me to get me excited about the job again.
That's
and
fantastic.
to be able to stand in a classroom and tell them like the real part of the job, not, oh, here's the book and this is what the book says.
Right.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's what it's all about. Before we let you go, JP, how can people reach out to find you on social and about the website?
So if you go to the website, social media links are on there, and not every morning, most mornings I do short little videos, usually about 5 minutes, and post those on there. So they're on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and the links are all on the website. It's the easiest way to find me on there. My number's on there, email's on there, and people can reach out to me whenever they want to.
Awesome. So visit JP at catalystofchangeassociates.com. The website's in the show notes, so everybody's got that. And don't be strangers. This guy is a wealth of knowledge, as you've heard if you've been with us for the show today. You know, it is about mentoring. It is about giving the best of what we've learned through the crap that we've crawled through to help make a difference. JP, thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. We wish you all the best, continued good health, be safe out there, and we will be in touch.
I appreciate it, and hope for a quick recovery for your mom as well.
Thank you, JP. I really appreciate that. Take care.
Take care. Have a good night. You know, Sam, that was powerful, and it opens up the doors to what we've been talking about. Having the conversation. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And we know that's not the truth. We need to get rid of that uncomfortable fact. He has found a way to let parents who do not know how to speak with their children about certain issues, especially post-traumatic stress, to make them understand. To open up that door and open up that conversation, because the children are more resilient and more knowledgeable than we give them credit for.
Yeah, you know? Again, that book is called Why Won't You Play With Me? It's available where books are sold online. Go to the website, catalystofchangeassociates.com. He's got everything on there, and you can pick up the book. And like I said, that book is for everybody. Everybody. If you've got mental health issues going on in your family, PTSD or otherwise, whatever it is, pick up that book. It creates a whole new dialogue and a way to communicate effectively. Hey, you know, we have got coming up this Friday a workshop. Thank you, Garland Police Department right here in Texas, for bringing us in. Once again, it is an open workshop. So if you are within an hour's drive to Garland, Texas, visit abadgeofhonor.com. Just click on the events tab, and you'll see where you can register right there online and join us this Friday for a life-changing workshop. It's work. That's why it's called a workshop. We're not speakers. We're doing the work together with you, right. But you will learn the strategies, tactics, and techniques. So when the stress comes up, stop it in its tracks and move on with your day, transition into a successful, happy home life. Again, with this book, this is going on our website. Okay, so everybody can get it from JP. To all of the first responders out there, we thank you for what you do, for holding that line. Do not keep your heads up. Do not let a few bad apples ruin it for everybody else. Okay, there are amazing men and women out there, and we are praying for you. every single day. So thank you so much for all of our active duty personnel that are keeping our home front, safe here, our shores, our country. Thank you for what you do.
Our skies.
Our skies. For all the veterans, thank you for what you did for this country to allow us to have the freedom to bring you this show every week. John, take us home.
Don't want to forget March 25th. We're doing a special firefighter workshop over in Rowlett. Look at our website for that. That's going to be first half is going to be for our firefighters. The second half is going to be for family of firefighters as well, to bring the families in. Our condolences go out to the 2 firefighters in Florida who lost their lives to post-traumatic stress a week apart. I think it was Marion County. I may be wrong.
I think you're right.
But for a chief to lose 2, firefighters are sometimes those people that we don't think that they suffer from post-traumatic stress as much as law enforcement. They do. Our dispatchers, our correction officers, our forensics teams, everybody who deals with some sort of trauma each and every day is going to feel the effect. So be kind, be thankful, and join us for the workshop and show them support. I want to thank our military as well. And, once again, I want to thank JP for opening up that conversation. That is a wonderful thing on the children's books. And Sam, mom, and prayers to her.
Thank you. We'll see you next week, everybody. Thanks for being with us.
Take care. Bye.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBM Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBM Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.